Well, so this is my board doing George Washington. It is not academically correct to have alcohol in the presence of myself, so I would have started off by taking a shot, because that's how I would do this to honor me. So pretty much my topic is George Washington and his secret whiskey distillery. He was not only the first president, he was, ironically, in his old age, he decided to open a distillery, and that is what we were going to look at. So the irony of George Washington having a distillery was the fact that he was the first president, and during his presidency, he was president in his time. The Whiskey Rebellion was what came about. It was pretty much it was a tax. It was the first tax on a domestic product in the newly formed USA. It was on the whiskey itself. It was meant as a means of funding public debt in the Revolutionary War, and this was something that Alexander Hamilton, who was actually his Secretary of Treasury, he put it up and said, hey, we can do this, let's see what we can do, and George being president said, okay, let's sign off on it. The anger towards the tax exposed previous problems because we're still forming the USA, because this is in the 1700s. The Whiskey Rebellion was in 1791. We're still forming, still getting everything together. It exposed tensions between older, long-settled areas on the eastern seaboard and the frontier west. It also represented the first test of the continental power of the federal government to control citizens and enforce compliance with laws. The farmers felt that they were getting singled out because they were getting taxed on products that they had not been taxed on before, and they couldn't afford it. I mean, they didn't have money to afford. The law was written sketchily, I say, because it was what they defined as country. It was country. It wasn't clear. It was harder to keep tabs on the production of whiskey distilleries, so they had to pay a flat rate tax based on the distilled capacities. But since they didn't produce that capacity because they had a lack of time and a lack of manpower to keep the stills going for the full season. So they had to pay more tax per gallon than the large commercial farmers. And then Alexander Hamilton, he believed that a tax on spirits, aka luxuries, was the best solution. A tax on the production might tend to a decrease of consumption, which was apparently a good thing because it's right before prohibition and don't drink. That's a bad thing. Let's not do it. So the tax fell onto producers who could then pass it on to consumers by raising the prices. George Washington didn't want to call his troops on people because it was becoming an outraging and increasing problem. And he didn't want to bring troops on the people because he wasn't trying to create any crap. And so he issued a proclamation revoking violence and unruly. What led to the distillery happening was James Anderson. He was a Scottish plantation manager. He ended up becoming George's farm manager in 1796. George Washington retired from his presidency, so to speak, in 1797. He was 65. James approached him and told him he was missing opportunities with his estate. He said, you have an abundance of crops, you have a great water supply, and George Washington had a state-of-the-art grist mill, which is right there, which is what you need. And so the major difference between Anderson is that he wanted to use rye, which is what the abundance of crops that George had growing on his plantation was. A cover crop is just something that they would do. They don't do it really now. It's rare now, but it would help manage the soil erosion, the fertility, and the quality of it. So pretty much laid it down to fix grass. Anderson wanted to take the rye and turn it into whiskey. George was hesitant because he's 65. He just wanted to live his life and just not do anything else. But he said, okay, let's try it. Let's see what happens. So they did a trial run. And it was so successful that Washington approved the plans for construction of a full-fledged distillery. Construction was done in 1798, and by 1799, it was the largest whiskey distillery in the country. It was located at Mount Vernon, which is his home, and he just 2 miles from his mansion, so it was close but not too close. And in that year alone, it produced 11,000 gallons of clear unaged whiskey. And George was not known as a whiskey businessman because of the fact that he died in the winter of 1799 when it started to just become successful and pretty much get off the ground. He died. It was left to his nephew, who did not have George Washington's business mindset at all, and so it just kind of did okay. And then it ended up burning into the ground in 1814. Anderson had only remained at the distillery until, well, the distillery as a farm manager, he was still a farm manager, up until Martha's death in 1802. For 193 years, various people went back to the site. There was archaeologists who went back there because, I mean, it was where the president lived, so they had to go back and they were looking at it, and they kept looking at the site and kept prodding and poking. And there was another group of people that kept a society that ended up building it up, kept looking at the site, and in 2007, the distillery, the grist mill, and the miller's cottage were all built and became open to the public. Now you can go up there and go check it out, walk around. Every year the manager of historic trades at Mount Vernon leads a small team in distilling the whiskey twice a year in March and November, and they do it exactly the way that Anderson and George Washington would have done it. And they sell it to the visitors that go up there 2 times a year. And the first rye whiskey is sold out in 2 hours. So apparently it's pretty potent. That, I mean, it's George Washington. He doesn't want to have a little bit of whiskey that's going to be present here. It's just ironic.